This is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Alex Ferrario, Donnie Fandango, and Jeremy Rutherford on 101 ESPN.
The Last Minute Blues Podcast is presented by Blue Note Roofing. Roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for free inspection.
It is the Last Minute Blues Podcast brought to you by Blue Note Roofing, roofing, siding, and gutters, your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for a free inspection. Donnie Fandango joined in the Jeff Burton studios by Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic, Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN. Gentlemen, we have almost made it to the Olympic break, which for you two is got to be just like knowing that you have the next couple of weeks to sort of take a breath. I don't even know, Jeremy, if that is even applicable for you necessarily.
Oh, yeah, he doesn't take a breath.
I bet you don't get to take a break.
And look at all the metrics.
Analytical breakdown?
Break it down for a couple weeks.
Here's a question, dude. So, like, for the next couple of weeks, when the team isn't playing, like, how does your focus change as a writer? Like, you've already done a bunch of the story. I mean, I would assume that it's stuff to do with the trade deadline, obviously what's happening at the Olympics. But does this break kind of make it a little bit harder for you?
No, because I think with the position that the Blues are in, like we all know where it's going, right? And it's leading up to the trade deadline on March 6th. So right now there is a trade freeze that begins today, Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And then that'll carry through the 22nd. And so I think everybody's focus right now is who are the Blues moving, and I'm sure we'll get into that today. So that's what my focus is going to be, just to lay the groundwork, prepare, think of some story ideas that might interest readers in terms of what the Blues could do. I think we all know the names. We all know the possibilities. But, for example, we're going to do a Who Says No. That's kind of a staple at The Athletic, is let the subscribers send the trade proposals in, and then we'll kind of evaluate them and see if that's something that works. And you never know. Maybe one of these subscribers lands on a
I've already told you 2 trades that'll happen, JR, so you're just waiting for mine. I'll give you the names and everything.
Hey, just like last week's episode, I pray that they do not happen.
So are you going to tell us, or does it just have to?
I told you on the last episode. I said Kyrou for Power. That's one deal that I've brought up.
That's right.
And then Falk for one of the Detroit Red Wings goaltenders is the other one I brought up.
That's right. I remember that one as well.
See? Now, JR's got an interesting one, though. I think JR's time off is actually on March 7th. March 6th is the deadline. March 7th until the end of the season.
You're not far off. Although I will say this, once, let's say deals are made on March 6th, right?
Yeah.
Right at the deadline.
Oh, yeah,
then
that's true.
from March 7th, okay, now what? What does this mean for the future? So we'll see. And then, Donnie, the other cool part about having quote-unquote time off is, like, Alex knows I've been talking to him a lot about this. I'm pouring my heart into this Jake Neighbours feature.
Yeah, I can't wait for this one.
And I've told Alex some of the details, and you get to spend some time on the article. When they play every other night, like Alex is doing the pre and post, it probably seems like they're playing every day, right? Because you just, so when they're playing every day and you're down at the rink, you're out at Centene, it's kind of tough to put your, mind to it. But to have, several days off in a row and you can really just head up to the bread company or where else and bury your head in the corner and work on the story. It's just, I think the story turns out so much better when you have that extended time.
Yeah, I really can't wait for this one. And I think we're going to have some awesome conversations once the piece comes out, just describing Jake Neighbours as a individual, because my personal opinion, and I haven't read it, I've just talked with you about it, I really feel like people are going to read this and be like, oh, that's the next captain of the Blues.
Then we already feel that way a lot anyway. And I've said this from time to time, but I really I'm a big reader. I love to read. I still read actual physical books. I'm reading a book right now about the 1919 Chicago Black Sox. I love to read so much. And over the course of the last week, I legitimately feel like the last 6 months of my Athletic subscription, it's just, I've got it all in the last week. I have read so much stuff about the Bills and about the NHL. I've been reading more about baseball this offseason than I have in forever. I love when you guys get to do your craft, get to really sink your teeth into a story, whether it be following something. And I'm not even saying that this is a particularly wonderful story to follow, but over the course of the last bunch of months, I was reading almost daily about what was going on in the Tyler Skaggs trial with the Angels. And there is just so much good work. You are so talented and work with so many talented people. If you don't have that Athletic subscription, and I understand money is tight for everybody, but it is the one subscription that I will will not give up. As a sports fan, there's just so much good stuff. And it's not in little blurbs. It's good articles. Like I said, you could sink your teeth into it.
Yeah, hey, two things. First of all, because you said that just gave me an idea. I've got some free 3-month subscriptions. Maybe, let's say, send in an email that says, you would like to be entered into this, and we'll pick one. We'll pick one of the emails, and I'll set somebody up with a 3-month free subscription to The Athletic.
LMBP at 1057thepoint.com. LMBP at 1057thepoint.com.
Yeah, send that in. And also, let's throw in a book, too. I know the books, we're looking
here we go.
Looking at however many years, 2019, since they won the Stanley Cup, but we're throwing a copy of the 100 Things Blues Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die.
Still sitting in my basement on my shelf.
Dude, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Jeremy Rutherford book.
All right, so
this episode of Last Minute Blues Podcast brought to you by Jeremy Rutherford
and The Athletic. But for real, and I'm not even just saying that because you're here.
No,
I mean,
of course,
just
I'm
as a
with
sports fan, man, I just love that sort of thing, and it's the closest thing, the closest thing to me than reading the sports page back in the day.
Oh, it's the go-to thing in the morning. You wake up, you click on it, and you see what news is going on around pro sports.
Yeah, and let me be honest with you here, because I really believe in this. I went to The Athletic because they gave you the time and the resources and the ability to write those types of stories. So do I love writing about games? Yeah, games are somewhat interesting, can be, but there's a lot of them, right? So, can you pull a good storyline out of every game? No, I don't think you can. But when you identify a player or a story like Jake Neighbours, and then you say, put me in touch with your dad. So then Jake puts me in touch with his dad, Ed. You saw him on the TV the other night, right? So Ed and I created a Google Doc, and he listed 15 people who were influential in Jake's life.
Wow.
And we're talking, relatives, coaches, so on and so forth. So I've spent the past month calling all these people, and you type up every word they say. And just to give people, an idea, how the sausage is made, you might come up with 50,000 words from all these interviews. And the final story is going to be 3,000 words.
Oh,
so you're cramming.
Good God.
Not only do you spend the hours and hours to type every single word in and see what you got, now that this is your palette, and now I'm going to grab this, I'm going to grab this, I'm going to grab this story, and I'm going to piece it together. And you might get it down to 5,000 words. And then your editor says, nope, 3,000. So then now you're going in and shaving. And Alex, oh my gosh, he's been a saint listening to all these stories just because I get excited talking about, what you discover. But I'll just share one super quick one is Jake Neighbours was on a hockey team when he was 8 years old, and they were called the Mustangs. And the coach told me the story the other day, Coach Seeley, Pat Seeley. He said that we had a kid leave the team. So we had room for one kid to add. So they add a kid. And imagine Jake's team is in the locker room. Here comes the new kid into the room. And the coach says, hey, everybody, this is so-and-so. This is Alex Ferrario. He's going to be the new player on the team. The coach said that Jake Neighbours was in the corner, stood up, walked straight over to the kid, stuck his hand up in the air, and said, Jake Neighbours, welcome to the Mustangs. Anything you need, let me know.
Wow.
He's 8.
8 years old.
He's 8.
Yeah, and so that's one little anecdote that, there's 100 of those that will eventually be in the story if they don't get cut out.
I don't know about you. All I hear, Donnie, is I'm glad you're the sausage maker, and I'm just going to keep eting the sausage.
Right.
Good God, 50,000, and I need you to make this 3,000.
Yeah.
Right. I would say the F word a lot to them. A lot. I would be like, no.
Well, we
5
wouldn't
is
be
great.
writing the article then.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't wait to and also to, again, with as gloomy as things can be sometimes, specifically after Monday night, you're winning 5-1, you lose 6. But I just feel like there are so many reasons to have hope and to be glass half full about this Blues team, and Jake Neighbours kind of leading that charge.
To that point, I don't know where you guys stand on this, because I feel like I live in La La Land right now. You're watching all of this, and as bad as it is, am I crazy to look at it and be like, I think they can be competitive next season? Like, I don't know what the roster is going to look like. It might be very different, and I might change my tune once this trade deadline passes and moves take place. But, like, I see Snuggerud, you see Dvorsky, you see what Robert Thomas has done in the past, you see Broberg, and it's like, man, if they could just fix some of their issues, which, I mean, that might be a bigger issue than what we're realizing right now. I mean, I look around at the wild card, and it's like, San Jose, Utah, LA, like they're good, but it's not like they're world beaters right now. So again, I think the Blues have a lot of issues that need to be fixed. But man, it's just, you look around the Western Conference and it's like, man, I don't think it's that crazy to believe they could flip it like a 180. And then next season, if everything goes correctly, you could put yourself back on the right track.
Well, I would very much like to be glass half full guy this year, but I think maybe this year early, and my optimism, I think I'm going to kind of try to temper it maybe a little going
smart.
forward. I think one of the things that I hear seemingly all of the time about the Blues moving forward is the defense. And that is what would give me pause in answering that question, saying that they could be back in it this year. I'm kind of just not sure of what we have.
To me, it's the system. Like, and I'm acting as if I'm this hockey guru. I'm not. I'm just watching these games. I just think this man-to-man defense has just made it a lot worse than what it should be. Like the Nashville Predators game, for example. Like Nashville figured out what your plan was, and they just completely wiped it away and altered it. There was a play at the end of the game, the one that Stamkos scored the go-ahead goal. It was one-on-one with Dalibor Dvorsky in front of the net. Like, you're going to lose that battle 10 times out of 10. We've talked so much about how the Blues needed to adapt and get bigger defensemen. Man, they've got it. You got 6'6" Parayko. You've got a big, tall Broberg. You've got Mayu. You've got Cam Fowler. You've got Adam Jiricek coming in. You've got big bodies. I just don't know why that man-to-man right now is still in place. And most of it is because it wasn't working early on the season, but I think we all can agree the goaltender struggled early on in the season. So that's the part for me where it's like, man, I just wonder if they finish out this season and it's like, okay, we need to go back to zone. We need to hammer in on it in training camp and preseason. And then we need to go back to what was working for us last year and what makes our defense great. The identity is big, tall defensemen.
Yeah, and some teams go back and forth with the zone and the man-to-man, and some teams, have a hybrid during the game, during the week,
Yeah.
But I think the Blues have to go back to that zone, and that particular play that you're talking about, and hopefully people who are listening can kind of picture it. Dalibor Dvorsky in front trying to box out a Ryan O'Reilly, and O'Reilly's going to win that. I think that's got to be a feisty Colton Parayko. That's got to be a feisty Broberg.
Yeah.
That's got to be a Tucker. That's got to, O'Reilly has to tell him, or Mayu, O'Reilly has to tell himself, I'm not going to be able to park here because the Blues are going to wipe me out. And that isn't that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So the players know that they can go do that. So that'll have to be addressed. But, big picture, going back to what you said, who's the king of the analogies? Is that this guy right here?
Yeah.
I like the prince.
King of the analogies.
I'll call myself the prince of it.
I didn't know that we had named you that, but that's okay. Absolutely.
Self-proclaimed. It's fine.
You said cup half full, right? And he's optimistic about next year. Okay, here's the deal. The Blues bought a house that they're going to flip, right? And so this house, it looks dilapidated, and you just said that I think they can be, okay, I think that house can be flipped next year, but I think that a lot of things have to go right. So you know how you watch those shows and you go in there and they think, okay, we're going to have this done in 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden they find out the plumbing.
They find carpenter ants.
Yeah, exactly. No! Exactly. So maybe Doug Armstrong finds some carpenter ants, right? So no. So
you're getting too ahead of yourself on this analogy here, JR.
See, you took me down the wrong. But I think that it depends what problems they run into. Yeah. So if Doug Armstrong picks up the phone and, this team is talking about maybe wanting one of the core players and Doug gets excited, hey, we're going to move so-and-so, and then it doesn't happen, well, now you got carpenter ants. So, I think it's a situation where the house can be flipped, but you're going to have a lot of things go right.
Call my dad if you find those carpenter ants.
What's the phone number?
I'm not going to hand that out here.
So we talked about this on our Last Minute Blues podcast group chat yesterday, and I want to get to a percentage of the chance that a particular Blues player is going to get traded. And I want to get to that in a second, but one of the things that I wanted to ask, actually, I didn't want to ask it. Alex brought this up, so I'm pretending. But
you could have taken it.
But I really should have. It would have just made better for storytelling. That's okay.
It's okay.
How do the Blues make sure that their asking prices are not too high on any of these guys?
So this was the part that I was listening to TSN yesterday, and Pierre LeBrun was on there of The Athletic, and he said that the Blues have their prices set and teams are waiting for the asking price to lower, meaning like they're asking for a lot for their guys.
Okay.
And so I got to thinking, it's like, man, Doug Armstrong has said in the past, and I think he's actually even said, sometimes it's faulted him to where, he views guys higher than what others do around the league. And sometimes that comes to where the trades don't happen. And you just get to thinking, it's like, look, right now, you don't just want to sell things off for pennies on the dollar. But at what point do you look at what you have and you say, man, there's something wrong with the team itself. Mm-hmm. And I can't keep coming back with it if it's not working. So do you have to go into the market and sit there and say, look, we want this in return. We value this guy. A great example. The report came out that apparently Robert Thomas, the ask for him is like the equivalent of 3 top 15 first round picks.
Ooh.
And it's like, oh my gosh. And I agree on that front. But take that same player and say, you're asking for it for Justin Falk at the trade deadline to where you want the equivalent of 2 first round picks. If nobody's going to give it to you, do you just sit there and say, well, we're not going to get it. We need to just move on. That's the part that would concern me, I guess, if I'm a Blues fan is, man, as much as you value these players, there needs to be change. And you don't just want to make trades for change's sake.
Yeah.
But, man, you can't keep running it back with the same group and just pretend that it's going to get better.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. And you try not to paint yourself in a corner by making these statements where, in 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, no, this is the headline for our podcast.
Somebody comes back and says, it's not happening because, every year I've covered the National Hockey League, 21 years, the month before, it's always prices are too high. That's always the case. If Doug Armstrong wasn't asking for this much, he'd be insane. So I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that big picture is that if Doug Armstrong goes, you know what, I'll take 1 top 10 prospect for Robert Thomas. That trade, the phone would be ringing off the hook and the deal would be done. So he's asking for 2, 3 guys. Same situation with Falk. If he's asking for, let's say, a first round pick, and now keep in mind these contenders, they're drafting late in the first round.
They're not big first round picks.
So if he's asking for that, the deal's probably already done, right? So he's asking for more than that, and then you come down. It's almost like you go to, gosh, dang it, why am I doing another analogy? You go to Schnucks and you see something that says sale. You're more apt to jump on that, right? Because it says sale, even though if it's not that much discounted.
What were you picturing when you were thinking sale at Schnucks, JR?
Right. What fattening food can I think of on the fly here? But I think it's a deal where he has to ask high.
It makes sense.
And I guess when I say that's not happening is there is no way that the trade deadline comes and goes and all these players are still on the team. And the reason that Doug says, hey, I kept them is because the other teams didn't come up with this exorbitant price tag.
And I guess the part that I'm asking too is not so much like or Falks or the Shens or the pending UFAs. It's more the core guys.
Right.
It's the Kyrou, the Thomas, the Buchnevich, if that's the way you go. And again, I understand you can't sell these for pennies on the dollar, but man, you just for 4 straight seasons, it's been the same narrative, and I just don't know that you can continue to sell that. You know what? They'll figure it out. You're past that now for those guys.
I'm with you.
It's here now, or we're going to have to make a different move.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm glad that you clarified these core guys, and I agree with you that even with those guys, there has to be something in Doug Armstrong's mind, a standard. Okay, I didn't get the world
right,
but I got the best I could, and I made change.
And there's change here, and I got something back that's still going to be a part of this move forward. I got you.
And other GMs know that they kind of have the Blues by the twig and berries. You know what I'm saying?
Especially because of the no trades.
Because of the no trades. For a number of reasons, Doug Armstrong going out and saying, as you say, hey, something big has. It kind of. I would say it doesn't sort of lessen. How do I want to say this? You're probably not going to get back as much as you would like to get back when you're going with that particular mind frame out in public.
Yeah, that would be the concern on top of it. But we all know how Doug handles it to where it's no, we just won't move them then. So there's a real chance at least some of the core pieces are back because teams feel the same way. But the other part of me where I wonder if they do get deals done is teams are desperate to get pieces that help them become better. And even if it's an underperforming player on your roster, teams look at it and say, well, we can make better with this guy. And so that's when the price maybe gets paid.
And even like Drager said on TSN, in addition to saying that the Blues prices are high, the thinking right now is also the cap ramifications
Yes.
with some of these top core guys. Now, granted, $8 million isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's a lot to add at the deadline. So these other teams, hey, they might be interested in Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Colton Parayko, so on and so forth. But how do they make $6.5, $8 million work? And that's going to be a challenge for any team trying to make a deal with the Blues with these guys.
Yep.
Because you have to be cap compliant for each playoff game.
Yes, isn't that the new, or is that next CBA?
I think it's next CBA.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they triggered that for this year.
You guys might be right.
We'll
I
have
might
to
be
double check
jumping
that,
one.
but
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's the next CBA because it's the same one as the contract extensions where it's the 7 and the 8.
You're right, but so then it wouldn't be applicable in this particular trade season.
Now that he said that, though, part of me is wondering, wasn't that enacted for this upcoming playoffs?
I'll have to double check.
I'm gonna look it up while we're
I don't want
talking.
to say something that's wrong, but all I'm saying is that even if it's not set for the playoffs this year, they still have to when they make the trade, so they have to be cap compliant at the time of the trade. So regardless of what the situation is in the playoffs, to make this deal before March 6th, you still have to get in under that cap.
All right, so let's do this. Let's take a little bit of a break.
Update for you because I just Googled it. Thank you, Google. Starting with the 2026 Stanley Cup
so they
playoffs,
did enact it.
NHL teams are required to be salary cap compliant. So the 20-man roster that is dressed for each playoff game must fit under the then current upper limit of the salary cap. So that loophole is gone. Look at Donnie.
Yeah, he got it.
He told us he reads.
Yeah, it's just, you know what? It's just nice every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just nice every once in a while.
But the what you just said there, though, is so normally teams have to be under the cap for a 23-man roster or whatever. And the roster expands after the trade deadline. But like what you just said, they have to be the 20
guys that are on the ice.
On the ice have to be under
So
the
they
cap.
can't have the scratches. We'll scratch and I don't even know why that would work, but it's not the 23-man roster that we see now. It's the 20 guys that are playing in that playoff game have to be cap compliant. So if they trade for an $8 million player, let's say the Florida Panthers trade for Artemi Panarin and give him the contract extension. They would not be able to play him on the starting lot or in that game unless the whole roster is cap compliant. So it is really money in, money out.
What are you going to do now, Las Vegas Golden Knights? What are you going to do? All right, let's do this. Let's take a break.
Like a Mark Stone reference there.
No.
I was just waiting for me dogging on him to pop up somewhere.
It's either that or Pete DeBoer. It's like a bingo card.
Oh, that friggin' guy. Anyway, let's come back. Let's start talking about some of these Blues players who could be moved at the deadline. Second segment, Last Minute Blues podcast coming next. All right, so guys, we are back here, Last Minute Blues podcast. And so I think what we're going to do here, I'm going to name a player, and then we are going to say what we think the percentage is that player is going to get moved.
Yeah.
All right. I would also like to put a tiny asterisk for when we get to Jordan Bennington, because I believe that his trade value. Well, shoot, let's just start with Benner. You want to just start with Benner?
That works.
Let's just start with Benner.
Let's start with Benner.
Because I feel as though that if Benner goes to the Olympics, maybe gets knocked out in game 1, doesn't play a ton during the tournament, I don't know. I don't know that the Blues move him. I would say that the chances of him getting moved, in my estimation, maybe 20%. But I think if Benner goes over there and does what Benner can do, which is I just root for this dude no matter what.
Right.
I honestly believe that jumps up to maybe 75%, because I believe that there is going to be one of these teams that needs a goaltender that is close to that goal, that finish line rather, that would trade for Benner. So I would say good to great Olympics, 70-75%. I would say if he does not have a great Olympics, I honestly think that it's 25% or less. I think he's here to start the year next year.
I think both scenarios, whether he's good in the Olympics or not good in the Olympics, I still put it under 25%.
Oh.
And here's why. I think in the Blues' mind, even if this is a lost season, they would look at it and say, we think we can still be competitive next year for a playoff spot. Not a Stanley Cup contender. We're bringing in Carbonneau. We're bringing in Jiricek. We potentially are going to draft top 3. Who knows what we can pull off with these trades. We think we can be competitive next year. We cannot be competitive without a goaltender. And what I mean by that is you've got to have a tandem to win in the NHL, and the minor leagues have nothing. I mean, no disrespect to Zarenko or Georgov, I think his name is, but they have not, or Romanov, they have not been good for the minor league system. So I think they would look at this as, look, both Hofer and Binnington have 1 year left on their contract, I believe, before Hofer's an RFA, Binnington's a UFA. I think they say, unless somebody blows us out of the water, we're bringing back both of these goaltenders because it helps keep us competitive, and then we'll try and figure out what the next step is next year with who the runner-up if we decide to move on from Binnington. I think Binnington is more of a candidate either in the offseason, I'd still say unlikely, or next year at the trade deadline if the team's bad.
Yeah, I think that if, let's just say he has a great Olympic and they win gold and he's one of the reasons why, I think that could push a team over the edge to say, okay, listen, St. Louis is just bad. Like, yeah, you could call people in St. Louis and find out that he hasn't played well either, but St. Louis is just a bad team. He could help our team. And maybe there's some interest. I agree with Alex that if the Blues say they want to be competitive next year, they would probably lean towards keeping Jordan Binnington and not trading him. Where I think that this could go in a different direction is if Jordan Binnington wants to leave.
Yeah.
Like if he sees that Joel Hofer's the starter, he's going to get, 60% of the starts, and he still wants to win with somebody, they could go to the Blues. And Doug Armstrong acknowledged that. He said, listen, if it gets to a point where we go to him or he comes to us, we'll talk about it. So I think that conversation could be there. So I'm going to throw the percentage of Jordan Binnington. We're not going to use the trade deadline, but let's say by the summer, a Jordan Binnington trade at 30%.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Let's go to the big dog.
Oh, big dog.
Robert Thomas.
Oh, geez. Okay.
What do we think here?
I put this at 5%.
Okay.
And honestly, part of me wants to say 0, but I'm just going to put it at 5% because I don't think a team is willing to pay for Robert Thomas for what the Blues are asking. And I don't blame the Blues for asking that. We've talked about this on the podcast before to where I really wonder if some of this is the Blues just haven't had the talent to play with Robert Thomas. I think they look at this as we're going to give this a little bit more of a runway than the others to where, look, and I looked at this last week, Robert Thomas produced the most points in the National Hockey League last season from the Four Nations break until the end of the year. Like more than McKinnon, more than McDavid. His expected assists per 60, which for people that it's super analytical, but it's basically the goals that are supposed to go in, they're created because of Robert Thomas. The only two players that have more of those this season when this team is bad than Robert Thomas are Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon. So as much as I think you need change for change's sake, I don't know if you want to do that with a centerman to where you're bringing in a couple more shot first guys next season. Maybe you can rearrange the chairs with some other pieces and see what he has. If somebody's willing to pay what Doug's asking, I think it would make sense. I don't think teams are willing to pay for what Doug's asking. So I'm going to say it's 5% because I don't think teams are going to cough up what he wants.
Can I Price is Right you and say 4%?
Don't be a jerk, JR. This is why fist fights happen in Price is Right.
4%. I don't think
3%.
Yeah, you don't get to go, do you? Or you're going.
I still got to go,
going
yes.
3%. Oh, shoot. So I'm in trouble now.
Shouldn't have talked, JR.
I don't think they're going to trade him. I think that they feel like he can be a contributor on this team. Could they ask for 2 or 3, top prospects / assets and get them? If a team did that, then maybe the Blues would take them up on it. But here's my issue is you can trade Robert Thomas and what are you left with? And are you any better?
Yeah.
And who's going to get your wingers who you're developing, like the Snuggerudes, these guys, who's going to get them the puck?
Yeah.
Right.
For the next however many years. Like, look how long it took to find Robert Thomas. How long is it going to take you to find the next guy?
Yeah.
As much as I like Dalibor Dvorsky, he doesn't have the Robert Thomas vision and passing. So, yeah, I think it's 4, and now I got to listen to you say.
No,
JR?
No.
Maybe he'll go 6.
Listen, in an effort to not play the game and just to move on, I would put it somewhere where you guys are saying, in the 5% range. Unless we're getting blown away here, there's no way you're moving that guy. And also, too, when I really start to think about moving him, man, oh man, I get real nervous.
Yeah, the only way you do that is if you're getting a 21-year-old top center predicting a top center producer who's 21 years old on the return. Like, that's the only way you're doing that.
All right, let's move on to Buch.
This is no disrespect to Buch.
The percentage of him getting moved by the deadline.
0%.
We know where this is going when he starts.
This is zero.
Out,
you can't price this right at me on this one. This is 0%. It's been a bad season. Now, I will say for Buch, he has been performing much better at the center position.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really wondering if they're looking at this going, hey, we need to get the best out of Buch. Maybe you're a center moving forward for us. That could be a conversation for another day. I put it at 0%. I just don't think teams are wanting to take on a 31-year-old forward who has not produced and is $8 million.
5 more years. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. I just...
No way.
Unfortunately, now if he performs next season and you're in a bad spot still, maybe teams would start sniffing around there, but not now. I don't think there's any chance you see him moved. I think he is here for at least the rest of this season and into the offseason.
It's the old catch-22 because right now, if Pavel Buchnevich had 28 goals and the Blues were where they were at the bottom of the standings, there'd be vultures hovering over St. Louis, even with the 5 years left on the contract. But he's nowhere near that. Mm-hmm. That contract takes him to his mid to upper 30s, and there's no guarantee that he's going to be the player that he was, even though he's playing better now.
Yeah.
And we talked about Buch at center on BK and Ferraro yesterday. I don't see that being long term because you get a Thomas back, you get a Suter back. Dvorsky's developing. Where's Buchnevich going to play? Are you pushing Dvorsky down to make Buchnevich your second line center? I don't think that's the case, and I think that in the end you'll see Buchnevich back on the wing.
Not to get sidetracked with it, but just I find it a fascinating conversation. My mindset here, because we're going to get to Shen and maybe get to Pew Suter as well. If those two guys are moved, then your center depth is pretty low. And I would look at it as, look, he has not performed. He's not performing as the winger. We need him motivated. Let's keep him at the center position. And is there a harm in having him as a third-line center for you who's still playing top penalty kill, second power play unit, first power play unit, but is that third-line center for Thomas and Dvorsky? And then if injuries pop up, now you've got a guy who you can at least put in one of those top 6 roles.
Could, and it's a fair point. The only thing is I think you need him to be a 30-goal winger. Yes, you have Neighbours. Yes, you have Snuggerud coming. Yes, you have a couple of these guys, Kyrou if he's still here. But for this team to be successful, the way they paid Buchnevich and where he's at, he was a 30-goal scorer in this league. Whatever happened, figure it out.
Is it crazy though to say what if he's not a 30-goal scorer as a winger? What if the best chance for us to get more offense from him is to have him as a center?
Yeah, no, it's not crazy, but I guess my answer to that would be: have we completely ruled it out? Are we saying that for the next 5 years he just literally can't produce at the wing? Yeah. So you have to have some sort of fallback if it's not going to work.
All right, guys, you mentioned him, JR, Jordan Kyrou. I think. Listen, I'm a few things about this guy. One, I'm tired of him. I'm literally tired of the Jordan Kyrou conversation as a whole. I'm friggin' exhausted by it. And not only for myself as a Blues fan, but for this guy. By all accounts, he's not a dick. He's not like a locker room cancer. From what I understand and from what I sort of gather, he is just kind of a little bit of a more aloof sort of personality. And I just wonder if for the Blues, specifically for Blues fans, and for Jordan, if a move needs to happen. That said, I'm not particularly convinced that there's going to be a deal that's going to blow the Blues out of the water to make this happen before the trade deadline. So if I'm saying Jordan Kyrou, I'm not putting it over more than 40%, because I just wonder if the Blues asking price there, again, might be too steep. That might scare people off. That said, I still think in the offseason, something has got to happen here with this young man. I just think it might be a good thing for both parties, for a parting of ways.
I want JR to answer first so he doesn't price us right here. But is this just deadline or is this deadline and off-season?
I got both. So.
Okay.
You
do both with them. Between now and the start of next season.
He's the one player where you kind of got to do both.
Yeah. Okay, JR, before you price us right me.
All right. So I think with this one, there's interest in the Blues to move him. I think that all the things you said were valid, but I think we're to the point with Jordan Kyrou where, what you see is what you're going to get. And is that going to be enough once you get back to being a contender and being a playoff team. And I think the Blues have probably made that decision that it's no. I'm going to say that before the March 6th trade deadline, that there is a 15 to 20% chance that they move Jordan Kyrou before then. I think that if we're extending it to the offseason and to the summer, when you can make moves like that a little bit easier than you can before the trade deadline, I'm going to say there's a 50% chance. Wow. And he might be the one guy, well, definitely when we're talking about the top guys, that I think there's a more realistic chance than some of the other guys we're talking about.
Man, I'm going to sound like a crazy person right here, but I'm going to stick to my guns. Before the deadline or at the deadline, I'm putting it at a 50% chance.
Ooh.
And after the deadline, before next season, I'm putting it at a 75% chance.
Yeah. No, it's nothing.
I think he's the only piece of the core that you can realistically move on from. And I think there's generally a lot of interest in him. And the part that everyone will say is, well, he's got a no trade. He gets to decide. I have to imagine Jordan Kyrou is just kind of fed up with all of the outside noise of all of this. It's hard to play hockey and focus when every little thing you do wrong is highlighted and pointed at. Like the Blue Jackets game, for example. It was a bad decision by him. In any other market, I think it's probably, well, not any other market. Toronto's probably doing the same thing we're doing. But, a lesser market's probably seen as, bad decision, it's fine. St. Louis sees that decision, and it's like, you got to be kidding me again with this. So I think there's going to be interest. My gut tinfoil theory is the team that misses out on Artemi Panarin at the deadline turns to the Blues and say, okay, can we make this work? And if it doesn't work at the deadline for cap purposes, that deal then become hotter at the offseason. So I'm saying 50% at the deadline, and I'm putting 75% before the start of next season.
Yeah, and I don't think 75 is far-fetched. It's the thing with me is, are the Blues going to take pennies on the dollar?
Yep.
Like, if they're not, that's why I went a little bit lower with the 50. But if the Blues are willing to say, okay, we want to move him, and this is the best offer we have, then I think 75 is very fair.
All right, I'm gonna lump these two guys in together, even though I don't want to take away anybody's individuality, but just for the conversation in which they were having, Braden Shen and Falk, 100%. By the trade deadline.
100%?
I think 100% both of these guys are gone. As a matter of fact, especially when it comes to Falk, you want to sell high. Whoa. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not getting any higher than right now. So to me, both of those guys, trade deadline, they're somewhere else.
Yeah, 100% I'm
I guess I shouldn't say 100%, but like 90. You know what I mean?
I know where you're going with it, but like my only concern is the prices are high and the people say, well, I'm not taking that on because there's another year left. It's not like it's an unrestricted free agent that they take the chance and then he's just gone. Maybe that's part of the reason why teams would pay a little bit higher for it. I would put Falk higher than Shen. I think I would go about like 80% with Falk and like 60% with Shen. Falk seems like it's probably the most likely of all of them. You said it because the price is probably, this is the best it's going to be right now with how he's playing, but also it's a right-handed defenseman and teams want those and value those in the playoffs. Shen, as much as I've convinced myself that I think they're going to move on, there's also a part of me that wonders, like, with Steen taking over and how much he values that type of leadership, that you look at it and say, hey, if we're going to be moving on from core pieces of teams and other pieces that are mouthpieces for the locker room, would it be important to have a guy around like this? He's got, 2 years remaining after this season on his contract. Would it be important to keep him around so that he can mentor Jake Neighbours a little bit more, so that when the time is right, that Jake's ready to take on that C if that's the decision they make? It's the only part of my intrusive thoughts where I'm like, well, maybe they don't trade him. So I'd put it at 60 for Shen.
All right.
Yeah, I think with Falk, I'll go in the middle of you two. I'm going to go like 90 to 95, and I think it's going to happen. But, I think with that term left on his contract, Alex brought that up. I think teams probably look at that as, hey, 6.5 with that cap going up to 104, 105. That's not a bad price. If you're going to have a second pair right shot D guy, 2 playoff runs with Falk, if you can get that deal done. So I think that's going to happen. I think the Blues are going to be willing to sell at whatever it comes down to. We talk about the prices being high now. And with Shen is a tough one, and Alex hit on it because, you can say whatever you want to say about the Blues culture and the leadership, but Alex, you're there, I'm there. He does he does so much. He's so valued by the organization.
Yeah.
Did you see, like, I had two little anecdotes in the story the other day, Donnie, where, Jim Montgomery made changes to his line combinations, and he said, Dvorsky, Snuggerud, Schenn, get out there. Dvorsky turns around, and he says, am I center or wing? And Schenn goes, you go to your natural position. I'm going to wing. Get out there. And then they went out and scored on that next shift.
Yeah.
And so, okay, did that get the Blues to second in the Central Division? No. But we're trying to show you what he brings to the value of bringing up these young kids. Tell me a Dvorsky sees that and, they're all the respect in the world. And then, same article, we're talking to Jimmy Snuggerud, and he said, hey, look, I've been having trouble putting the puck in the net. Schenn came up to me and said, hey, you need to head up, scan the ice before you let it go. And that's something that Snuggerud said you learn in college, but it happens so fast in the NHL that you need somebody to remind you. Schenn did it. So anyway, getting back to Schenn, that leadership value is, okay, it hasn't gone anywhere for the Blues here, but it's still valued by the likes of Steen, who could say to him, look, do you want to win? If you do, you want to go somewhere else? We'll help facilitate it. You got the 15, no trade. We'll work with you on it. If not, gosh, we'd love to have you here.
And what you just said, I'm sorry to interrupt, that is so valuable, I have to imagine, for not just Snuggerud and Dvorsky and Stenberg, but Justin Carbonneau, who's going to probably be here next year. And if you're drafting in the top 3, somebody who could be playing on this team next season. Imagine if it's a winger like Stenberg or McKenna. That's the guy I want around that guy rather than pluck him out of the locker room. And, I mean, Neighbours is the best piece that you have right there for it, but I always wonder with younger guys, like, are they ready for that massive load, and how much does that impact their game? Yeah,
and I can understand if anybody's listening, watching, and they say, to hell with that. If you can get a first-round pick or whatever for Braden Schenn, who cares about feelings? Move him, find a team not on his no-trade list, and move him. We're moving on. I totally get that, but I'm just saying that you can't turn on the TV and watch the nurturing of some of these younger guys. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to build this culture back up. I think there are some players in the locker room that they need to move to kind of improve that. And guess what? Number 10's not one of them.
Yeah. Like you have to move pieces out that are hindering the evolution of that culture that they want in there, rather than move the guy that's probably the biggest piece of that culture in that room.
Absolutely so. Boy, oh boy. All right, let's do this. We got to wrap this up here, but let's take a break real quick. Let's come back. I got a couple more for you guys. All right, final segment, Last Minute Blues podcast coming next. All right, so guys, we were running through, the big dogs, as it were. Thomas, Falk, Kyrou, their chances of being traded. But just in this like sort of next grouping of guys, Fowler, Sonny, Nick Bjugstad, Pius Suter, even Colton Parayko. Do you see, and again, I hate to do this while we're kind of running low on time, but do you see any of those guys as being those that could potentially be moved here, whether it be off-season or by the trade deadline?
So I would take Parayko and I would toss him aside. I don't think he gets moved. I think they've made it pretty clear that's the guy that when you trade him away, you're looking for that next guy. Mm-hmm. And if you're planning on Jiricek being on this team next year, man, if it's Jiricek and Mayu on the right side, you've got to have somebody who can eat a lot of minutes for you. So I would toss Parayko aside unless somebody blows them out of the water. Fowler, I would put a pretty low percentage on, just because his season has not gone well. He's another older guy that's got a contract extension attached to him. But I did find it interesting over on Puckpedia, and I don't know if it was updated or not. His trade or his no trade list is only 4 teams, and that's carried over from Anaheim.
Right.
And I wonder if that now some of this gets negotiated when the contract extension takes place, and Puckpedia may not update it. But if there's not a lot of trade protection, I do wonder if there's a chance you see him go. And then of the others, I really wonder. I don't think Bjugstad gets moved. I really wonder about Pius Suter and Oskar Sundqvist. Those would be the two that I'd probably put at a 50% clip, because both play center, both are vital for a bottom 6 role that you need to score, and both provide net front presence, and both are great defensively. So I would put Pius Suter and Oskar Sundqvist in like a 50% category of, I really wonder if there's a chance that they could get moved if somebody swings the right deal.
Yeah, I'll just touch on a couple of them. I'm kind of intrigued. Drager mentioned Parayko in the group of players that have drawn interest around the league. I'd be surprised. I really would, because you've got those young defensemen coming up, and they're going to need somebody. They're not ready yet. They're going to need somebody around them when they come in next year, if it's a Jurček coming in next year. And, you got to eat that ice time. So I would be surprised with him. The one that you touched on, Suter, I guess, but I don't think you're going to get wowed by a deal, and he's relatively inexpensive, and he's, Swiss Army knife. He can do so many different things. So if you're going to still try to be competitive, he's a good option for third line center, and I don't think you get back, enough to make it make sense. Sundqvist is another one. I think he could go to a team. I get it. Ton of injuries. I get it. He's lost 6 steps. I get all that stuff, but he's got the pedigree to go in and be, even if he becomes your 12th or 13th forward for a playoff run, he's super cheap. He's got the experience, and I could see the Blues doing that, even though they love him. So of those guys that you mentioned, those are the ones that come to mind.
Boy, this is going to be absolutely fascinating deadline.
We did what? 10 guys, 11 guys, and all of them, there's a chance you could see get moved between now and next season.
Boy, there's going to...
Yeah, because none of them were 0% other than Pavel Buchnevich.
Absolutely.
At least from my perspective.
No vacation this summer.
Yeah. Sorry, JR. No days off.
Well, it's going to be incredibly fascinating to see what happens. That roster freeze, though, is on as of right now.
Yeah, so Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Yeah. So today.
All right.
Depending on when you've watched this, it's either right now or it was a few hours ago.
If the Blues make a trade between now and 2 o'clock, which would be less than 4 hours away, that would be just our luck, wouldn't it?
If it happens, you're going to have a brand new episode tomorrow.
As long as it came in with the percentages that I said.
Yeah. Or if it was the trade that I said, so we'll both be right.
All right, guys. Well, let's. I have so much to do today. Oh my God!
Oh, yeah.
Like just an absurd.
Do you want to hang around and do pre and post with me for 8:50 puck drop between the Blues and Stars?
Can I tell you something?
You remember when you loved that chance, Donnie?
Hold on. Let me tell you something. I still don't not love that chance. I'm going to a symphonic band concert tonight.
Oh.
And I love my daughter very much. Okay. But this is the last couple of things that my daughter is doing with high school band. And so I'm not particularly sure how much she even cares about it. So would I like to do pre and post game with you? Yes. Yes.
Still.
A lot.
Oh, I love it.
Because if I'm not at the school for the symphonic band concert, then I'm at home with Dexter watching the Red, White, and Blue Night on The Masked Singer.
Oh.
So
my wife's watching that probably too.
So I would love to be with you.
Okay.
I mean,
deal.
like I would love for
deal.
That to be
JR,
the case.
you're invited too.
I would not. I'll be at home.
It is the Last Minute Blues podcast. Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic sitting right over there. Our good friend Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN. I'm Donnie Fandango. Thank you as always for listening and watching. Send those emails our way, lmbp at 1057thepoint.com. It's the Last Minute Blues podcast. As always, let's go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues podcast on 101 ESPN
is presented by Blue Note Roofing. Roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for free inspection.